Hey guys, welcome back to Moyo, the cooking channel that's not so useless. Today's video will be covering a staple Asian breakfast dish, congee. Now I'll be honest, I find congee served outside to be quite lackluster. They're either too watery or too thick, and I just find them too bland. And who can blame them, when I was raised on this creamy bowl of goodness. Now this is actually the most basic congee variant my mother makes, and we decided to showcase this recipe to really drive home just how good congee can really be. So to make this congee, we're going to do 3 key things: prep the ingredients, boil the impurities out of the pork ribs, and cook the congee. For the ingredients, we're going to need pork ribs, pork neck mince, vegetable oil, white rice, dried scallops, cooking wine, boiled water, white pepper, cornstarch, salt, and sugar. For the quantities, we'll need 700 grams of pork ribs, Chinese cut, 300 grams of pork neck mince, 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil, 2 cups of white rice. For us, it was about 320 grams of jasmine rice, 40 grams of dried scallops, although the quantity is up to you, 1 teaspoon of cooking wine, about 4.5 liters of boiled water, again the quantity is up to you, a dab of white pepper, half a teaspoon of cornstarch, a bit less than 2 tablespoons of salt, and it may seem a lot, but don't worry, just keep watching, and half a teaspoon of sugar. You will want to prep the ingredients the night before to make it easier to cook the congee the next day. To start off, we want to get rid of the blood from the pork ribs. We're going to be using some Chinese cut pork ribs, but we're actually using the offcuts here. And where might the good cuts be, you might ask? Well, you've already seen them in our char siu barbecue pork ribs video. Anyways, just ask your butcher to cut some pork ribs for you. About 2 cm thickness will do. So add in 1 teaspoon of salt, and then submerge the ribs in cold water. Then give it a good mix, and leave it for about 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, you can see that the water is a darker hue of red. Wash out all the blood water. And give the bones a good rinse through. Then put them in a strainer and let them drip dry. Or, as usual, if you're in a hurry, pat them dry with a paper towel. Season with 1 tablespoon of salt. Wrap it up, and finally, put it in the fridge overnight. Moving on to our dried scallops. Give them a quick rinse. We want to rehydrate them, so boil enough water to submerge them completely. Then cover them with a plate and leave them on your bench top overnight. Lastly, the 2 cups of rice. You can do this step 1 hour before cooking the congee, but we like to do it the night before to make tomorrow's cooking process more time efficient. Give the rice a quick rinse through 2 to 3 times. Then add 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil, and evenly mix the rice with a fork. We add oil to prevent the grains from sticking to each other, as well as the bottom of the pot when cooking. Once mixed, cover it up with a plate and leave it on your bench top overnight. The next day, similar to what we did when we made sweet pork bone soup, we want to boil the impurities out of the pork ribs. Take the ribs out of the fridge. In a pot, fill it up with enough cold water to submerge the pork ribs. At the stove, turn the heat on high and throw in the pork ribs. Then give them a quick shuffle and just let the impurities get boiled out. "10 minutes in, you can see all the scum floating on the top. Skim the scum out. and let it continue cooking for another 2 to 3 minutes. Afterwards, strain the pork ribs and rinse them 2 more times. And with that, the majority of the impurities should be gone. Checking up on our overnight ingredients. The dehydrated scallops are now rehydrated and the water is now a tinge of brown. Now be sure not to throw away the scallop water as it does retain a good depth of umami. Looking at the rice, well, nothing much has really changed to be honest. Get out a big size pot. For us, we'll be using this pot, which can hold up to 7.5 liters. And begin boiling a lot of water. In the pot, start off by adding in the pork ribs, and then the scallop water. With the rehydrated scallops, be sure to shred them before adding. Then top them up with the boiling water. Again, we used about 4.5 liters here. Turn the heat on high and let the pot boil away. You want to make sure you can visibly see the shredded scallops dancing around in the water before you add the rice. This will help prevent the rice from sticking to the bottom of the pot, as there's some leeway resulting from the convection currents. And while you're at it, you can skim the remaining scum and foam off the top, but be sure not to skim out any of that scallop meat. Keep an eye on the pot. Don't stir it around, and once the water reaches a furious boil, turn the heat down to a medium-low and let it cook for about 30 to 35 minutes. Now even though we've turned the heat down, you want to make sure that it's at least high enough to induce some convection currents. We want to make sure that the rice is continuously moving, such that it doesn't get stuck to the bottom. 35 minutes later, give the pot a good stir, making sure that the rice that's settled to the bottom comes back to the top. Now as you can see, the individual grains are still quite intact, but we want them to break down a bit more. So we're going to let the congee sweat a little. When the water has a slow boil, put the lid on. Keep a close eye on the congee to ensure that it doesn't boil over. And once the liquid starts to noticeably rise, turn the heat off and just let the pot sit for an hour. In the meantime, in a bowl, add in the 300 grams of pork neck mince, half a teaspoon of sugar, a quarter teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cooking wine, and a dab of white pepper, and then give it a good mix. Then add in the cornstarch and give it another mix through. Now back to the congee. After 1 hour sweating, turn the heat on high and stir every 20 to 30 seconds for the next 10 minutes to prevent any burning. As you can see, the rice is more translucent and is broken down a bit better than before. After 10 minutes of back and forth stirring, turn the heat down as low as you can and quickly turn your attention to the pork neck mince. Ladle enough congee to cover the mince. And then use a fork to mix the mince around. This will help separate the mince into smaller pieces and make incorporating the mince evenly into the congee a lot easier. Pour the meaty congee back into the pot. Turn the heat back to a high and gently stir for about 2 to 3 minutes. Be sure to give the congee a taste test and season it to your liking with salt if you deem it necessary. And with that, our family's most basic congee is done. Sprinkle it with some chopped green onion and enjoy your breakfast. But hold on, what if you don't have 2 hours in the morning to make this for breakfast? Well, either cook it the night before and then just reheat a serving of it in the morning, Or if you have one of these, a thermal cooker, then the night before, follow the recipe up until we need to sweat the congee for 1 hour. And instead, just leave it in this to sweat overnight. Then just continue on with the recipe in the morning. So guys, that was my family's recipe for congee. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And if you ever get the chance to make this at home, be sure to tell us how it goes. And if you want to see any of our future videos, be sure to subscribe. See ya.